Tonight on Sightings, it's the search for the world's most elusive creatures.
And all of a sudden, the top of it swiveled, like, you know, a head.
Are these monsters myth and legend, or horrifying real-life creations?
I've never seen anything like it. I was very, very scared.
And could these terrifying mutations threaten us all?
So there's a good indication that there may be some strange animal that we haven't discovered yet.
At that point, it started to appear.
They had large, dark eyes, claw-like hands.
I began sensing and knowing and feeling.
I do believe in life after death. I mean, I've been there.
We have not scratched the surface of what the mind can do.
It's a connection with the unknown.
Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Tonight, monsters. They inhabit the nightmares of childhood and the folklore of every culture. And now there are scientists who believe that monsters aren't just myth. They're real. There are bizarre creatures among us that can't be explained. Some of them have been captured alive. And many of them live in our own backyard.
Since earliest recorded history, there have been monsters to strike a chord of fear in all of us. In the Bible, monsters represented pure evil. They took many different forms, but all had the same goal: to do the bidding of an unrelenting Satan. By the 1800s, the sensibilities of Victorian society gave monsters a human face, but their evil deeds were decidedly inhuman. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein became fictional folklore, but the strangest account wasn't to be found in the pages of a Gothic novel, but with our 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt.
In the late 1800s, the woods of this country, the wilderness areas, were wild and dangerous. President Roosevelt found out just how dangerous these wilderness areas could be. Teddy Roosevelt loved to hunt. He loved to chase creatures through the wilderness, track, shoot. One night he found out this wasn't as much fun as he thought, when his hunting party frightened a Sasquatch into the camp of two trappers. One of the trappers was killed, neck broken, body mutilated, half-eaten by what seems to be, for all intents and purposes, a Sasquatch. 18.5-inch footprints were found the next morning, and Roosevelt was discredited. He became obsessed with finding this creature.
This is a theory developed by world-renowned Bigfoot investigator Terry Albright, based on Roosevelt's own writings about his hunting experiences all over the world. Although Teddy Roosevelt never actually came face-to-face with a Bigfoot, Albright claims he was obsessed with stories of reported sightings and carried the fascination to his grave.
Now, if Sasquatch is out there and potentially dangerous if aggravated, how many other creatures or things that go bump in the night are out there that we don't know about?
This is Hollywood's version of monsters. Creatures designed to scare us, even horrify us with their bloodthirsty qualities. But Hollywood monsters are just as likely to make us laugh at our own fears when they're obviously men in silly rubber suits.
Hollywood pokes a lot of fun at monsters. But the fact of the matter is, we have unexplained deaths. The Pentagon must know. Therefore, why aren't we being told the truth about this creature?
Despite resistance, Terry Albright continues to search for proof of Bigfoot and other alleged monsters. One unlikely hotspot is Bishopville, South Carolina. Residents here have encountered a bizarre humanoid creature that's rumored to haunt the nearby swamps. On July 5th, 1988, the Sheriff's Department responded to a call from a man who said he had been attacked by a scaly, 7-foot-tall monster locals have dubbed Lizard Man. 20-year-old Chris Davis was changing a tire on his car when he heard strange sounds.
And after I finished changing the tire, I was putting the stuff in the trunk. And I heard a noise. I looked back. I see something big running towards me. So I shut the trunk and ran to the car. I heard a loud crash on the hood.
Something or someone had clawed the hood of Chris's car and ripped off the molding. Footprints that didn't match those of any known animal were found near the attack site by Sheriff Liston Truesdale.
This track was found in the woods
not long after this man's story broke out.
No one knows what creature could have made this claw-like print, 14.5 inches long and 7 inches wide. There are alligators in the area, but no one believes the prints or the attack was the work of alligators or any other animal known in the pages of traditional biology. And yet each year, there are bizarre discoveries that drastically change our perceptions about life on Earth.
It scared me because of the traits it had.
Everyone believes that there is something here.
They say we went back that way, and I went that way.
Sound far out? Well, pandas were once mysterious monsters in China until Western zoologists tracked and cataloged them. Marine biologists estimate that there are over 1 million species of sea life yet to be discovered. In 1989, Woods Hole Oceanographic captured these incredible bioluminescent creatures, and no one knows what they are. Could these be real living monsters that somehow survived from prehistoric times? Experts believe the ozone layer is shrinking, creating climate changes. DNA may be mutating, and with unprecedented heat and drought, who knows what bizarre new life forms may be created by these atmospheric changes.
Coming up next.
Its appearance was just a large humanoid creature walking like a human being.
Our sightings investigators search for the legendary Bigfoot.
There is no possibility that could be a man in a fursuit.
A monster 8 feet tall, half man, half beast. Perhaps the elusive missing link between humans and apes. Since the first recorded sighting in 200 BC, creatures matching this description have been reported worldwide. But witnesses have caught only fleeting glimpses of the monster we now call Bigfoot. Is he, or she, real?
From their office in San Dimas, California, Terry Albright and his partner Peter Gattilla are obsessed with tracking down the legendary Bigfoot. For over a year, the team has been concentrating on a rash of reliable sightings in Sonora, California. Signs of the creature's impact on local business are everywhere. In fact, the residents have adopted Bigfoot as an unofficial mascot.
Travels up and down the West Coast, and it's in Alaska in the summertime and then comes back down here for winter.
Biggest thing is size and its movement. More human-like than anything, than any animal. It had to be Bigfoot. There was no other answer.
Here, Albright and Gattilla ask eyewitness Faye Milner to return to the site of her first Bigfoot encounter.
We got out of the car, and dogs started raising hell and just barking and sniffing and carrying on. So I just looked around. I thought, well, you know, maybe there's something here. Looked up here and saw 3 Bigfoots standing there.
During an examination of the forest, the researchers found evidence they believe confirms Bigfoot was there. And recently,
these branches way up here and up here. Now, some of these branches have been rubbed raw of bark. Places where things have been broken off, as you can see, through here. Not only that, below it, there is a path. Here is a branch which has been knocked off and walked over many times. Broken branches here, pushed down branches there. Something has obviously come through here regularly.
The evidence is similar to that found throughout the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia, and eyewitness descriptions are strikingly similar.
We could see them go behind that tree, in through that opening, and then they were gone.
What I saw was about a 6.5, 7 foot creature, Bigfoot.
That's the scariest I've probably been in my life, to be that close to something and not see it and feel it. And the way it was breathing, I figured that thing was big, big.
Its appearance was just a large humanoid creature walking like a human being.
In the Himalayas, it's called Yeti. These tracks were found at the base of Mount Everest. The Chinese call it Fei-Fei, a 10-foot-tall creature whom they say has a taste for human flesh. Native Americans call it Oma. In Canada, it's Sasquatch. And in the western United States, we call it Bigfoot. October 20th, 1967, Bigfoot research pioneers Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin discover the trail of what they believe is an enormous Bigfoot. They gather what evidence they can, and deep in this pine forest, begin to feel an uneasy presence. They face a dilemma. How will they react if a Bigfoot actually appears?
We came around a bend in the creek where there was a downfall tree. At that point, as we came around the bend and the creek there, this creature was standing beside the creek.
Startled by the looming presence of the creature, the horses reared. Roger Patterson was thrown to the ground, but steadied his camera long enough to capture this legendary creature on film.
They encountered it very close, I think 20, 25 feet away, and Roger Patterson turned on his movie camera, ran after it as far as he could, and finally he stopped and it walked away.
Further perspective on the footage comes from Grover Krantz, a physical anthropologist at Washington State University.
Here is a cast that was made at the, in 1967 at the site where Roger Patterson got a movie of one. And this is what I would consider to be probably an adult female. The creature has extremely wide shoulders, well over 3 feet wide. And I've done some measurements, and no human being at 6.5 feet tall would have shoulders and chest widths to equal that. So there's no way they could fit their arms in the costume. I've gone through the whole film and reconstructed everything, the exact body movements and everything you can. And I'm satisfied that there is no possibility that could be a man in a fursuit. There's just no way around it.
If the film is not a hoax, then this is the moving image of a giant unknown species, probably female, as she passes alone by a river. Her slow retreat suggests no fear of man and no desire to make contact with us.
Films, videotapes, and plaster casts of giant footprints do little to satisfy skeptics who believe that Bigfoot is nothing more than hoax and folklore. Scientists demand more conclusive proof, and some believe that proof may be found in the fossilized jawbone of a species called Gigantopithecus.
In the late 1950s, an anomalous lower jawbone was discovered in China. Dr. Krantz believes this may be scientific proof that Bigfoot exists.
I've taken this jaw and tried to reconstruct what I think the entire skull would look like. This is what I've ended up with, that this is what the Gigantopithecus skull would have looked like. So I would certainly say the best guess as to what Bigfoot is it's Gigantopithecus still with us.
With mounting physical evidence from all over the world, Krantz believes it's only a matter of time before responsible researchers make the scientific discovery of the century, the capture of a living, unharmed Bigfoot.
Coming up,
we knew right off the bat it had to be some kind of a monster in the lake.
has science found proof that the Loch Ness Monster exists?
Well, there's a good indication that there may be some strange animal that we haven't discovered yet.
If we are to believe the thousands of sailors and fishermen who've seen them, enormous sea serpents have populated our oceans and lakes since earliest recorded history. The most popular spot for sightings is, of course, Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. For 1,400 years, residents have searched for proof of a monster they know is there.
The celebrated Loch Ness, 24 miles long, its waters so deep, dark, and murky that legend has it this body of water is cursed. Locals will tell you the lake never gives up its dead. Since 565 AD, hundreds have witnessed a creature no one can explain.
There came out of a loch was this huge shape, massive shape, brown, grey in colour, huge. And it then zopped back into the loch, and then the loch was flat calm. And what I saw then was waves about 18 inches high going to each side of the loch. And then it just disappeared.
Believe it or not, we saw this great neck emerge from the water, at least about 5 feet, we estimate, above the water at an angle,
head and neck seemed to be one, then it moved down with a sideways kind of motion and disappeared. And we hadn't drunk a drop of whiskey that morning.
These witnesses are seeing something strange and alive in the water. But what? Some believe that there are prehistoric creatures in Loch Ness that have survived extinction. What else could explain this bizarre figure, captured in the most famous of all Loch Ness Monster photographs? Taken by a reputable London surgeon in 1933, this was the start of a worldwide search for proof of the monster.
The big question in all this, of course, is, are these animals real? Why don't we catch them? Why do we see them so rarely?
In order to answer these questions, scientists have used many different techniques to photograph or even capture the Loch Ness Monster. In 1975, the Academy of Applied Sciences made headlines around the world with these remarkable pictures. They clearly show a flipper and the body of a creature never photographed before. Could this be what locals affectionately refer to as Nessie? With this new evidence, the search for a living monster intensified. Operation Deep Scan was mounted. Boats equipped with sophisticated radar and sonar worked together to scan every inch of the lake. Then, one underwater scanner picked up a startling anomaly.
Atlantis, what depth did you find target at, over? It started at about 480 feet down and rose up to 320 feet before we lost the target, over.
When we work with sonar, we get strong sonar contacts in Loch Ness. Obviously, we have to resolve that because the two may be linked.
So what is in Loch Ness? The answer may also explain what is in Lake Okanagan, 9,000 miles away in British Columbia, where residents describe an equally mysterious lake monster.
We had slowed down somewhat and moved over for it because it was coming straight for us. As it got across from us, we could see that this object, it was about 30 feet in length, and it was stirring up a tremendous amount of water.
Could the creature that reportedly inhabits this lake be related to the Loch Ness Monster? The sightings follow a similar pattern, going back 100 years when Indians named this monster Ogopogo.
All of a sudden, Ogopogo came to the top of the water, and my husband looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, it's Ogopogo."
We figured it's around 40 feet long, and there's no fish in this lake 40 feet long, so it wasn't a fish.
We knew right off the bat it had to be some kind of a monster in the lake.
Unlike Nessie, an Ogopogo sighting has rarely been captured on film. But in 1987, an American film crew shooting a news documentary on Ogopogo made news themselves when they shot this rare videotape, an unidentified creature rising to the surface of the lake.
Nothing around it, nothing in front of it, nothing behind it.
What did the news crew film? Was it an extraordinarily large fish or a prehistoric cousin of the Loch Ness Monster? Are witnesses seeing the same type of creature 9,000 miles apart? And could there be more yet to be discovered in other bodies of water around the world?
There's a good indication that there may be some strange animal that we haven't discovered yet. Chance will eventually perhaps favor us with discovering everything that lives in the ocean.
If lake monsters actually exist, where did they come from? One intriguing theory suggests that during the last ice age, certain prehistoric animals were trapped in what would later become freshwater lakes. The possibility that these monsters are actually living dinosaurs propels scientists to continue serious research.
Coming up, the world's most bizarre and frightening creations may be forced into our own backyards.
It wasn't a natural thing. It was some kind of, I think it was an unnatural creature.
A bolt of lightning, 100 million volts of electricity. Experiments have shown that this may have been the jolt that created life out of seawater. If that's true, imagine the beasts that could be created in the toxic waste of the 20th century.
I've never seen anything like it. I was very, very scared.
Perhaps the most amazing discovery of all was this creature, captured by Japanese fishermen in 1985. This bizarre carcass was caught off the coast of New Zealand, but the fishermen did not realize the importance of what they'd found. These rare photos were taken before the body was thrown back. Satellite photographs show that thousands of square miles of Pacific Ocean may be heating up. Near Mozambique, a fish thought to be extinct for 2 million years is captured alive. Could all these events be a hint of other monsters yet to be discovered?
When I first saw it, the neck was way out of the water. So I went to turn my boat to avoid this. And then all of a sudden the top of it swiveled, like, you know, a head. And that's when the excitement started.
Gary Limetta was on a pleasure cruise when he encountered a sea monster. This exclusive footage captures an 8-foot neck rising from the surface.
From what Gary Limetta has described, it looked to him like a very large turtle without a shell. The big question is, what can this animal be? After all, we have a catalog of a great number of animals that we have caught in the ocean. Are there any others?
We may soon find out. Dwindling animal habitats and destruction of the world's wild places mean animals, perhaps monsters, will soon have nowhere to go but into our own backyards.
It scared me because of the traits it had. You know, it wasn't a natural thing. It was some kind of, I think it was an unnatural creature.
Humanoid monsters and bizarre creatures of the deep have terrified people for thousands of years. But perhaps we shouldn't fear these so-called monsters. Remember, every day on this planet, more than 20 species of plant and animal become extinct, vanish from the face of the earth. Perhaps serious study of those creatures we call monsters can reverse the process. For Sightings, I'm Tim White.
On this edition of Sightings, vampires, are they real or the stuff that nightmares are made of?
The best thing about being a vampire is the taste of the blood.
Our researchers hunt for evidence in human skeletal remains and prove that vampires still exist. Then, they were ordinary people until they had frightening visions of real-life murders.
It was as if someone had put a picture right in front of me.
Fluke or psychic phenomena that could solve our most horrifying crimes. And our ongoing Bermuda Triangle investigation uncovers a startling piece of evidence that may unlock the mystery of missing Flight 19.
This telegram is certainly a genuine telegram of the period.
At that point, it started to appear.
They had large, dark eyes, claw-like hands.
I began sensing and knowing and feeling.
I do believe in life after death. I mean, I've been there.
We have not scratched the surface of what the mind can do.
It's a connection with the unknown.
Just about everything we know about vampires was created almost 100 years ago by Bram Stoker in his classic Gothic novel Dracula. It's been the inspiration for countless stories and movies about a fictional character with a taste for human blood. But today in the United States, some people believe that vampires actually exist. We think of vampires as part of Eastern European folklore or the result of Hollywood conjuring, not as the stuff of small-town America. But in the late 18th century, belief in the undead led to bizarre rituals designed to keep the newly deceased from coming back to prey on the living. The Connecticut countryside is dotted with old cemeteries. In Griswold, a dark secret lay dormant for nearly 2 centuries and has only recently been unearthed. In Washington, at the prestigious Walter Reed Army Medical Center, remains uncovered in Griswold were analyzed by Paul Sedzik, a curator at the National Museum of Health and Medicine.
I was given a call by the state archaeologist in Connecticut to help identify and analyze some skeletal material that was found at this site in Griswold, Connecticut. What happened was some kids had found a couple of skulls laying at the bottom of a little ravine, and they brought them to the police, and the police called the medical examiner. The medical examiner did some research into the records in that time period and came up with vampire activity or vampire cults in the 18th and 19th century.
Archaeologists probed the graves for mutilated corpses, the telltale signs of suspected vampires. The next step in verification was determining the cause of death.
Pretty evident to see the cause of death in the skeleton from Connecticut, this vampire skeleton. There's evidence of tuberculosis in some of the upper left ribs. And here we can see evidence here, this whitish area that we're seeing close to the articulation with the vertebrae.
Tuberculosis played a major role in the vampire folklore of the 1800s. It was believed that those who died of TB could come back and infect the living. So a ritual developed to ensure that a corpse's eternal resting place really was eternal.
What they actually did was take the bones here in the chest and jumble them up like someone had just taken their hand and kind of moved it around in that fashion. They then took the two femora, the upper leg bones, crossed this one here and this other one on top of it, over across like that. They then took the skull and placed that right in this area, and then they closed the crypt back up.
The graves were opened anywhere from 2 weeks to a year after burial. Graves of dearly departed loved ones or anyone who died of tuberculosis.
What floored me is just that people could actually believe that someone dying of tuberculosis could actually cause the death of loved ones. And there are accounts in New England, especially of men going into the graves of their daughter and removing their hearts and burning them, and you know, fathers doing it to sons, sons doing it to fathers. I mean, very close family units. There were probably lots of people attending these exhumations and killing of vampires, and when you do read them, there can be upwards of 300 or 400 people. The whole town would probably turn out. You know, it's a major social event. Digging up wives, husbands, sons, daughters, and trying to kill them again. I mean, that's something that we couldn't even conceive of today. I couldn't imagine going and digging up the grave of my daughter and trying to kill her again. I know there's something that completely would never enter my mind.
In many parts of America, you can still hear chilling tales of vampires today. In Los Angeles, professor of folklore and author Noreen Dresser researches living vampires.
Very often, the act of drinking blood is a prelude to sex. People who call themselves vampires. A corpse supposed to come to life at night and leave its grave and suck the blood of sleeping people. If a person wants to dress in black and sleep during the daytime and be awake at night and walk through the graveyards and listen to Gothic music, and that person's not hurting anyone, including the fact that that person might want to drink someone's blood and someone is willing to give it to them, I don't see where that's harming anyone.
I'd say the best thing about being a vampire is the taste of the blood and being with someone who trusts you and will let you drink their blood.
Katrina is proof that vampire practices are real and still occur today.
There are certain well-known criminals, for example, Richard Ramirez and Ted Bundy, who in reports, there were just little side notes that they did drink blood from their victims, but that was never presented as the main motivation for committing their crimes.
I would never do anything to a child or to an animal. This is something that I've only done with a consenting adult. You know, they have to be willing to do this, and anyone that I've ever done anything like this with actually has enjoyed it.
Some vampires attempt to take blood here from the carotid artery. However, that's rather clumsy and it's also quite dangerous. So this is not really used as often as taking it from the arm.
I can use an instrument like this, which is a medical scalpel. It's very sharp. It can be sterilized with alcohol, so there won't be any infection, and it's painless. Blood is an acquired taste. The best place is somewhere on the arms or the hands, and I'll just, continue drinking until the wound stops bleeding. Sometimes this leads to a relationship where they say, well, that was kind of interesting. I enjoyed it. Would you like to do it again sometime?
You could be attacked, mugged, robbed, shot, killed on the freeway. I mean, our life is so fraught with dangers and fears that it's a lot more satisfying to focus on something scary when we know what all the rules of that scariness are.
Why does the myth of vampires still persist? Perhaps it's because we are still plagued by diseases and our lives are still precarious as they were in ancient times. But unlike the rest of us, a vampire never gets sick, never grows old, and never dies.
Coming up, they were ordinary people until they had frightening visions of real-life murders.
It was as if someone had put a picture right in front of me.
And later, what really happened to Flight 19 over the Bermuda Triangle? startling new evidence may prove that the airmen survived.
There are people who have extraordinary powers of perception and make their living as professional psychics. But tonight we'll meet ordinary people who suddenly, and for no apparent reason, have one striking psychic vision. For them, that single clairvoyant moment becomes a living nightmare.
August 1990. The usually laid-back town of Gainesville, Florida was paralyzed with fear. 5 violent murders within 40 hours. 5 college students mutilated in their apartments, and no arrests. 2 years later, the case remains open. Over 1,000 miles away, a successful businessman who has never been to Gainesville begins to experience nightmarish visions.
Well, I walked out to the barn and about 9:30 at night and was taking care of the horses down there. And on my way back from the barn, I just happened to look up into the sky and I saw a window with a silhouette of a person in there. A few weeks went by, I had a premonition that I was going to meet this killer from Gainesville. The very next day after the premonition, I did meet a gentleman from Gainesville.
For the past year, visions of a murder have haunted a man who's never had a psychic experience. The images are so real, so frightening, that he's asked to remain anonymous and be referred to as John.
One morning, I just happened to see this vision of a dog. I seen the head of a dog on the door, and after looking at it more thoroughly, I could actually see the dog's body.
After a couple of weeks, John began to see more and different images in the door. A young girl, the state of Florida, an athletic field, a deer, a sickle. The images gave John no answers, only questions.
What is the average person to do when they start having what they believe are intuitive impressions about, say, a crime, a murder, a series of murders?
The spirit who was coming to me was a girl, a young girl. And I had the feeling that this spirit was a girl about 20 or so years old, and she was one of the victims.
John wanted to go to the police, but he was afraid that if he told them what he'd seen, they might make him a suspect. That is exactly what happened to California housewife Etta Smith 10 years earlier.
It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was listening to a radio broadcast while at work. And they said that they had found the lady's vehicle in Pacoima, I think on a dead-end street, and that they were making a house-to-house search for her. And as soon as they said house-to-house search and that thought registered, it was as if someone said to me, "She's not in a house." I saw a picture. It was as if someone had put a picture right in front of me.
Etta drove to a police station and revealed her startling insight to a homicide detective.
I explained exactly. It would be the right-hand side with a dirt path to her, a hill behind her. He suggested that I show him on a wall map where this area was, and that's when we discovered that it was Lopez Canyon. I don't think I was thinking right, but I knew I had to go see for myself. I knew the police would never tell me, and I was afraid maybe they wouldn't look.
Within minutes, Etta saw her vision become a horrifying reality.
As my eyes traveled further across the object, at the end of the object were white nurse's shoes.
On her way back down the canyon, she reported her grisly find to a ranger. Shaken by the experience, Etta then went home. Not long after, there was a knock at her door.
She went home, and then subsequently she was brought down by the police department and arrested for the murder of this woman.
It took 9 years and a jury trial before Etta was exonerated for doing what she thought was right. But how do you explain the source of her psychic experience, or John's startling visions? Somehow, John had to come to terms with the gruesome visions that had been haunting him. Psychic psychologist Keith Harari accompanied him to Gainesville to help him on his journey. They visited the murder scenes in search of clues to the mystery.
When I was out and, having these visions, I would ask for something that that only the police would know, and that she could tell me. One of them being that what was the murder weapon used, and she gave me a vision of a sickle, and the sickle could be found in an area behind a football field. And I also envisioned a tree and also a symbol of deer or some type of animal.
One victim attended classes at the Gainesville Teaching Zoo, where not only are there deer, but a parking lot under construction on top of what used to be an athletic field.
I'm just an average person, okay, having a vision, and that with that, they would look upon me as wacky.
The dead tree was the sign John was looking for, and with the supervision of Keith Harari, he began an intensive search for the murder weapon.
Things that have happened to me all pertain to this Gainesville killing, and this spirit that has come to me is one of the victims, and I feel it so strongly that I just can't let it go. I have to follow this through as she wants me to do. I feel that she wants to put an end to this and put this person in jail, and I just can't let it go like that.
Life is a mystery, and it's full of mysteries, and it's full of situations in which you don't always get closure. I mean, the healthiest thing to do in this case is to say, well, I don't know, I checked it out, I didn't find anything, go back to one's ordinary life and have a good life, open to the possibility that sometimes things happen that you can't explain.
On June 9th, 1992, while this story was being shot, a new development. A man named Danny Rolling was indicted for murder in the Gainesville case. But Danny Rolling is not the man in John's visions. John believes there's a second murderer who has not yet been caught. And in fact, the Gainesville Police Department admits there may be a second murderer at large. The investigation continues, and for John, so does the waking nightmare of his psychic visions.
Coming up next, did the Bermuda Triangle take Flight 19, or was it all a government cover-up?
They were all lying, all of them.
On a recent episode of Sightings, we told you the story of Flight 19, a squadron of Navy fighters that vanished in the treacherous Bermuda Triangle after World War II. And now, 47 years after the planes disappeared, Sightings has received exclusive information that reveals a bizarre new twist in the fate of Flight 19.
I doubt if anyone will ever be able to solve this.
You know, they were all lying.
East of Florida, north of Puerto Rico, south of Bermuda. These are the parameters for a region some believe is a portal at the rim of reality. This is the heart of the legendary Bermuda Triangle, the last stop on Earth for many who have dared venture within its boundaries. For the last half-century, men, women, and children have mysteriously disappeared here without a trace. And the Bermuda Triangle does not give up its secrets. But now, one strange Western Union telegram may reveal the fate of at least one victim of the deadly triangle. Nearly a half-century ago, on December 5th, 1945, the Bermuda Triangle claimed some of America's finest, men who had survived World War II. At 2 p.m., a squadron of Navy Aztec bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale on a routine 3-hour training mission over the Atlantic Ocean. At 3:45 p.m., Lieutenant Charles Taylor radioed in a distress call. He seemed to be disoriented. "Both my compasses are out," he said. "I'm over land, but it's broken." Sporadic broadcasts continued for the next 3 hours. Then, abruptly, all 5 planes lost radio contact with the tower.
When we couldn't make contact with Taylor, things became very frustrating. And then like when one thing went wrong, it seemed like everything went wrong.
The Navy launched a massive search and rescue operation, sweeping hundreds of nautical miles night and day. But no trace of the squadron was ever found. No debris, no bodies, no oil slick. 14 men and 5 bombers vanished off the face of the earth.
You know, your mind plays all kinds of tricks, and you think all kinds of things, and you just can't come up with a complete answer.
A strange rumor surfaced that the planes had not crashed into the ocean and that the crewmen were still alive. This rumor was based on the theory that Flight 19 was not on a routine training mission, but instead was part of a top-secret Navy intelligence project. The Navy was supposedly testing a new electromagnetic device believed to be more important than the atom bomb. This device was thought to be capable of making any metallic object and the crew on board invisible. It was called the Philadelphia experiment. 50 years after Flight 19 disappeared, a haunting clue has surfaced. On December 26, 1945, 2 weeks after the disappearance, Joseph Payanesso received a telegram signed by his brother George, one of the crewmen who had vanished in the Bermuda Triangle. The telegram read, "You have been misinformed about me. Am very much alive. Georgie." To check its authenticity, a Western Union official and a document expert examined the telegram. They both verified it is not a fake.
This telegram is certainly a genuine telegram of the period, and as for the contents, I leave that to someone else to judge.
When I saw the telegram and read it, I confirmed my suspicions that he was still alive. I believe that the telegram that was sent is real because of the way he signed it. They covered up something.
The top-secret report on Flight 19 has recently been declassified. The document states that the flight, quote, disappeared for reasons or causes unknown. Does the Navy know more than they're admitting?
I was very disillusioned with their whole procedure. I wrote hundreds and hundreds of letters, which they shifted me from one naval base to another and to one captain to another. They declared him dead due to drowning. And I asked them to tell me, how did they come to that conclusion? And they said it was within their power, and that was it.
The Navy continues to deny the existence of any project like the Philadelphia experiment. They also deny that any of the men on Flight 19 survived.
They were all lying, all of them.
Were the men of Flight 19 victims of a Navy experiment gone horribly awry? Or were they caught in the deadly vortex known as the Bermuda Triangle? Both possibilities are frightening to contemplate.